I've never done nothing wrong to Ricky Hatton. And I've got to tell you, he's one fighter who doesn't like any fighters. I don't care what he says. I shook hands with him. This is the biggest event I've ever been involved with. Let me tell you something. It's a massive, massive, massive event. The biggest event out there.
Yeah.
It'll break box office records.
Fantastic. But it's just a money fight.
If this wasn't happening, he won't be fighting till next...
Wheelbarrows of money coming in.
He won't be fighting till next March.
Joshua's been a 2-time heavyweight champion of the world. I think it's a fight it builds legacies, doesn't it?
But I don't agree with that.
This is Up Front with me, Simon Jordan. I believe there are a lot of vacuous, uninformed, unchallenged opinions out there. I want to get to the bottom line and cut through the nonsense. So with this podcast with William Hill, I'm going to get people with strong views who think they can stand them up to proper scrutiny. There's a good chance I might learn something along the way, and more importantly, so might you. Joining me in today's episode, a man who has spent over 4 decades in the world of boxing. He's promoted a host of iconic names down the years, from Prince Naseem Hamed, Nigel Benn, Steve Collins, Chris Eubank, Amir Khan, Ricky Hatton, and more recently, Tyson Fury. From breaking the cartel, to getting shot, to going to the very top, Frank Warren, welcome to Up Front.
How you doing, young man?
Not bad, mate. Not bad. The old game changer, Frank Warren. The old game changer. Perhaps we'll talk about that during the course of this interview.
Changed the game.
This is about you, and this is about your backgrounds. And the focus of this show is to talk about how you've got to where you've got, the journey that you've been on, and the things that you've done. And I suppose it starts with what made Frank Warren, what got you into a position to be in the business that you're in. It's an interesting business, just one you know that I'm looking at. And my eyes are getting wider and wider the more I look at it, as you've told me.
Be careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish for, yeah. Talk to me about your background, Frank.
I was born in Islington in 1952. I left school when I was about 14 and a half. And I drifted into doing a few things. I worked down Smithfield Meat Market. I worked down Covent Garden. I wound up owning some pubs and nightclubs. And I was very, very young. And I also operated machines like pool tables, some fruit machines and so forth in various pubs and clubs at a very young age. My family was quite an alpha family on my dad's side. 4 brothers, my 3 uncles and my dad, and they were all known in the area. They were pretty tough guys. I did very well at school to start with, but I sort of stupidly lost interest in it and started bunking off school quite young, which was stupid as well, but that's what I did. Given that you're in boxing, and given that you've got people in and around your orbit that can handle themselves, and also I know that you were related to Lenny McLean, who was obviously in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, but notwithstanding that was also a bare knuckle fighter of some repute, alongside with Roy Shaw. Yeah. Any inclination or leaning for yourself to have ever gotten inside the ring? No. I never had the discipline. I used to, as I said, I was involved in clubs and nightclubs, and I used to enjoy being involved in them. Made money out of it, and also enjoyed being out and about. So I had a couple of cousins who were boxers. Yep. Lenny was the second. They weren't bare knuckle fights. They actually thought they wore gloves. Right. And I put the third fight on the rubber match between them. I was only about 23, 24. And Lenny was a couple of years older than me. Lenny was always a bully, terrible bully. He was one of those kids who was always big. Mm. And he went to my uncle. First of all, we went to see him fight Roy Shaw at a place called Sinatra, spelt with a C, over in South London. And I know where that is. Do you remember that? Yeah. Streatham, I come from Northland. Yeah, that's it, yeah. And he fought Roy Shaw, and he came out. I remember the bell went. He came out, Lenny, and he hit him, and he went all over the place, Roy Shaw. And that's all he did. He never threw another punch. He went to the corner, put his arms up on either side of the ropes, and went to him, go on, hit me on the chin. And he must have hit him about 25, 30 times, and he just slid down the post. And what was going on there? My uncle gave him a terrible telling off afterwards. Say, what do you because we only went as spectators, how stupid it was, and that was that. And then about 6 months later, he went to see my Uncle Bob, and he said, there's a rematch. They want to do a rematch. Yeah, I remember. I've seen the videos of it. Yeah, and we put him with a trainer who was Freddie Hill, looked after both the Finnegan brothers, and he obviously couldn't be training somebody who wasn't licensed by the board. He could train him, but he couldn't get in the corner with him. So on the week of the fight, Lenny said to my uncle, look, I'm told if I win this fight, there's going to be trouble and all this stupid talk. So on the night, my uncle Bob and I were his cornermen.
You broke the cartel at the time, didn't you? There was a cartel of Mickey Duff, and Terry Lawless, and Jarvis Astaire that had everything. Mike Barrett that had it all tied up. And it was more to do with venues, wasn't it, than anything else? And TV. Is there anything different today? I mean, there's you, and there's Eddie Hearn and his crew, and there's Ben Shalom, and Callie Sowland and Wassermans. But isn't there a little bit of a cartel mentality here?
No, because we opened it up. You know, I mean, I say I opened it up because first of all is you couldn't book Wembley. You couldn't book York Hall. I couldn't book York Hall.
Right.
You couldn't book the Royal Albert Hall because they had exclusives. Yeah. And I get that and understand that. BBC did not want to show any of my fights. And ITV at the time did show boxing, but it was overseas boxing from America. They never had any domestic boxing. They had a little dabble at it and it all fell apart for them. They'd done some shows with Eddie Thomas when he got involved with John Conte, but it didn't work out. And when I finally got involved with ITV, and got them, and it was Thames Television in those days because obviously they had all the different regions, and got involved through the late Bob Burrows, who was a great guy. That broke the mold. That gave me a lot of strength to sign fighters so that you are going to get some exposure. I fought for live TV, border control, cartel. We do not want live TV. It'll affect the gates. And they were putting on some shows that were pretty crappy at that time because they had it themselves. I remember the night of the Tijuana Tumblers that they called, and these Mexican fighters come in. They lasted, I think between them lasted about 6 rounds in 4 fights. And the place was at the Albert, there was 1,200 people in there. That was it. So I got back into it. I had to find my own venues. I had to be creative. I was putting them in hotels. I eventually got to Ali Pali where there was a tent. I booked circus tents. I had to do everything I can to find a venue. And eventually I broke down broke down the whole thing that I could promote at York Hall. I got eventually to the Albert Hall. It took me about 15 years to get to the Albert Hall, Wembley and so forth. And then arenas started built around the country. But we couldn't do that. I was constantly at war with the board, threatening to take them to court or injuncting them, everything. And I won everything. Or they backed off because at first they thought I was a nuisance and I'd go away. And I had the bit between my teeth because I was really enjoying it. I don't mind having a little bit of a battle every now and then. So I got my bit between the teeth and I was determined to not be bullied by anybody and managed to, as I say, to basically see off the opposition and start signing fighters, which is the most important thing. Signed a lot of fighters up along the way, brought Joe Bugner back. And I got my first
Aussie Joe.
I got my first TV date back off of ITV at the time, and it went on from now.
What kind of promoter are you?
First of all, it's a business.
Yeah.
So am I going to look after myself? If I can, I will. Am I a gambler? Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I'll have a punt, big punt, because that's the background I came from, betting. Will I do something to spite myself? Yes, I'm a bit of a masochist in some ways. Will I pay more than I should do? Yes, I've done that. But I always look at the end game and what I can do and take each opportunity that I can make or create or it's available and try and make the best of it.
I'll tell you why I ask, because there's a controversy follows you at times. And I guess if you put yourself in the kitchen, it's going to get hot at times. But you've had well-publicised fallouts, or that's my perception of them, with Joe Calzaghe, with Tony Bellew, with Ricky Burns. And there is a rumour that follows you at times about that you don't pay your fighters, that you don't look after them, that getting money out of you is a bastard job to get. When that accusation is made of you, or made to you by me now in this instance, what's your reaction to that?
I'd sue whoever says it. If I didn't pay a fighter, what would you do if you're a fighter or a manager and you don't get paid?
Yeah, but you know how it works, Frank. We've seen it.
No.
Compare it away from you for a second, and I'll come back to you in a second. We know that bloody Don King had Tim Witherspoon in the bleeding poorhouse. right? So we know it exists
That's
in this
America.
sport.
We're talking about the boxing board of control in this country. You don't pay a fighter, you're called before the board. And if you don't pay them, they take your license away. And I've seen it happen.
So where's this come from then? Because
so your answer, let's answer everyone. Right. Ricky Hatton. I've never done nothing wrong to Ricky Hatton. In fact, I made available publicly all of the money that I paid him whilst he was with me. And it came out later that in a court case when his trainer sued him over according to the trainer, shortchanging him, that he was being cross-examined by the barrister and the lawyer at the time who represented Ricky was Jonathan Crystal. Sorry, Jonathan Crystal was doing the cross-examination, asked the question of Ricky Hatton, how much did you get for a certain fight from me? And he said, I remember that fight. It was the first time I ever got £1 million. And they asked me if they could see what I'd paid him, and I gave it to him. He said, well, look at this invoice. This invoice is for £250,000 more. It's worth for a big world title fighter. He said, no, that's honour. He said, well, there it is. This is the statement. This is the invoice, your invoice, and this is the statement proving it's paid in back. No. And they stopped the case. They asked, his barrister asked to stop the case. It's important.
Go on.
So what happened? He had a big fallout with his father over money not being declared.
With Ray, yeah.
This is well known. They had it's public, it's been in the newspaper. They had a fight, and he never spoke to his father. That was over money. Nassim Hamid, and Ricky's a pal of mine now. After all this, he came, because I never dealt with him direct. I dealt with the old man.
Right.
So he's part. Nassim Hamid, I walked away from him. That's what happened. It wasn't over money. And there's an interview that he did on Sky TV saying, his words, not mine, I should never have left him.
Listen, my experiences of you, I genuinely like you and I take you at face value, but I'm also, I'm having a conversation with you and these are things that go around the industry and I'm always interested to see the reaction because it gets said about you and people don't have the balls to say it. So I'll say it to you and you've given your reaction to it.
And you just got my reaction.
I got my answer. Yeah, absolutely. You've worked with some of the best fighters around. As I said at the top of the conversation, from Prince Naseem to Joe Calzaghe to Nigel Benn, Steve Collins, Ricky, you just mentioned Amir Khan, and now you've got the bloody biggest pest of the lot, Tyson Fury, and we'll talk about him in a minute. But who was your favourite to work with?
Well, first of all, they were the best. They weren't the best fighters when I signed them, except for Steve Collins. None of them were the best fighters. That's been matched. That to be brought along, and I did that. I'm a better judge than all of them, in my opinion. I think I'm a better judge. I've got more. Well, at my age, I'm doing it now. If I don't know now, I'm never going to know. And I'm a better judge than them. And I've made some of the best matches where our guys have been massive underdogs. Joe Calzaghe when he fought Jeff Lacy. Went to at Naz when he went out to fight against Kevin Kelly.
Smoked his boots.
Yeah, I took Danny Williams out to fight against Mike Tyson. And I told him, I said to him at the time, you will beat him if you're going to have to stand
What was left at Mike Tyson at that time?
Sorry?
What was left at Mike Tyson at that time?
Doesn't matter. For 2 rounds.
No, it's a money fight.
Let me just tell you something. Is this where you're wrong again? And I said to him,
Go on ahead.
No, I'll tell you why you're wrong, because you didn't let me finish. I said to him, for 2 rounds, you're going to get vintage Mike Tyson, which he did. He's going to throw everything at you, and then he'll blow out, but you've got to withstand that.
Right.
And that's what he did.
Anyway, you didn't answer the question. Who was your favourite to work with?
I really did. Right, I'm going to tell you exactly how it is. I really did enjoy working with Naz until the end when his brothers got involved, especially one of his brothers who's a complete idiot and knew nothing about the game. And that was it. I didn't enjoy that, the family involved. I used to like working with Ricky, who for his very first fight, when he made his debut for me, sold 3 tickets and worked very hard to bring himself through. The old man was a regal pain in the backside. Joe Calzaghe.
Sit on the fence, Frank.
Sorry?
Sit on the fence.
Joe Calzaghe was really, his dad was a character, but Joe's big problem was he pulled out 50% of his fights, so it was hard work.
Right.
He pulled out twice out of the Jeff Lacy fight. I talked him into fighting.
Because Carl Froch has got the ump with you about not making that fight with Joe Calzaghe.
Joe, let me tell you, Carl Froch, he certainly was wearing a frock when I met him.
Well, he told me to call you rude names, but I'm not going to get involved in that.
Well, I can give you a name back. We met in the Polo Bar at the Westbury Hotel. Right?
Yes.
Westbury Hotel. Sat there, he brought down his financial advisor, and I said to him, right, I want to make the fight for Calzaghe. And all he kept saying to me, but he can't make the weight. He's going to go. I said, he'll make the weight. And he did not want to know. And we didn't meet once, we met twice. So he's an out-and-out fanny merchant. And I'll tell you something else about him, which is a load of bullshit.
Are we settling scores here, Warren?
Well, yeah, because I want to settle the score. That fight he had the second fight he had with George Groves.
Yeah.
I thought the first fight, I thought he was going to stop George anyway. To be honest,
I think that's
but
right.
They got a rematch out of it. They didn't want that rematch. The only reason that rematch happened was because of George Groves.
I agree.
So he didn't want it. And if it weren't for George Groves, he wouldn't have sold it.
I don't know if Carl didn't want it.
He did not want it.
I don't know about that.
I am telling you, he didn't want it.
Maybe Eddie didn't want it.
Well, I get fighters saying I want that fight, and we'll see where we go with it. But he did not want it. But let me just say, he didn't want to fight Joe Calzaghe. He did not want to fight him. And I'll tell you.
Well, he'll dispute that emphatically.
He can dispute it till the cows come. It's a shame Dean's not alive. But what did he come to meet me for then?
I don't know. Maybe you thought you was going to make the fight for him.
I did try to make a fight for him. I wanted to make that fight. He didn't want to fight Joe. Is he going to move up to light heavyweight? When's he moving up to light heavyweight? I said, what are you worried about that for? Fight him now. He's not like him. And that is the truth of it. And he can sit and tell you what. And I've got to tell you, he's one fighter who doesn't like any fighters. He always does is slag everyone. He was so jealous of Amir Khan. He fought in Nottingham. I remember this. It's one reason he don't like me. I know that. He fought in Nottingham. So I said to him, look, and they, I don't know what gate they did there, like 3,000-4,000 people in this arena. So we said, well, I want to take Amir up there. We took him up there and sold the whole place out, and he had a 6-round fight, Amir.
Look how happy you are with that.
I just find it was fun.
Okay, well, on that line then, have you ever managed to persuade a fighter to take a fight that the category didn't want?
I think I did that with Joe Calzaghe.
Against who?
Against Jeff Lacy.
Right.
Because his father rang me and he said to me, and this is after we'd postponed the fight a couple of times, and he was going to get stripped. He said to me, Frank, he's injured. Joe's injured. It's a Saturday. I always remember it, about a week before the fight. I went, what's the matter? He said, he's hurt his hand. And I went, oh, bloody hell. I said, well, look, he's hurt his hand. I said, but they'll strip him and nothing. But he can't fight back. And his dad said to me, Frank, there's nothing wrong with his hand. He said, I don't know what it is. He said, speak to him. So I rang him. And he was a right, I like Joe, by the way, don't get me wrong, but he was a right whinge bag. He could be a right whinger. And so I said, Joe, oh, hello. Well, he's all like that. And I said, what's the matter? Liven yourself up. So I said, what's the matter with your hand? So he said to me, I don't, I'm not, it's like this and that. So I said to him, well, you only need one hand. And you asked any fighters, I always say, you're not fit, don't fight.
Yeah.
You can always postpone. So I said, we only need one hand. He went, what? I said, you beat him with a jab. I said, you would take him apart. And I brought him over twice. He fought twice on my cards, Lacy. And at that time, he was a world champion.
Yeah, I remember.
And they thought, and Showtime, he was their sort of middleweight, super middleweight, going to be their Mike Tyson, tremendous puncher. And he was a massive favourite. I'm talking about a massive favourite for this fight. So I said, you only need one hand. He went, well, I said, all you need to do, go out and buy yourself a trombone and just practice without. I said, you will take his head off. He won't get near you. He'll only catch you. He can't out-jab you. You're too fast for him. And as I'm talking to him, I can feel him lifting on the phone. He's like,
you well motivated you.
So I said to him, come. No, I don't know about that. So I said, don't tell my wife that. So he said, and eventually I've got him there. So now, I want to fight him right now. Where is he? So anyway, I put the phone down. His old man rang me back. He rang me back and he said to me, I don't know what you said to him. He said, but he's on. Animal. He said, no problem. I said, you sure his hand's okay? Definitely. Anyway, so the week of the fight, I mean, all I do is keep on at him. On the night, on the fight, he destroyed him. When I say destroyed him, absolutely destroyed. I went to the fight. He wrecked his career.
Yeah, I went to the fight.
He was never the same guy. And they should have stopped it. If that had been my fight, I'd have pulled him out. And after the fight, we're there, and he took his gloves on, and he's obviously southpaw. And I said, and I got his hand, and I squeezed it. I said, well done, never flinched.
He never got the credit, though, Calzaghe, that he should have got.
Calzaghe was if he...
Is that your fault?
No, it's not my fault. He keeps pulling out
promoter, 49-0, people don't talk about Joe Calzaghe in the breath that they should do, should they?
Well, I'll give you another example then why. It may be, I got him a job on kids. You know, remember he used to have I don't know what it is, the swap shop, whatever that was back in those days. And this is a kid show. You know, it's a new audience for us. They're going to do a big thing about boxing. He's the star of the show. Saturday morning, right? You've got to be at the studio. He lives in Wales, whatever. I get a call about 8:00 Saturday morning. Like the wind, John. Hello, Frank. Like, there's a little wind. So I said, what's the matter? He said, I'm not feeling good. So what do you mean you're not feeling good? I said, where are you? He said, I'm home. So what are you ringing me at? You're supposed to have been in London to be at the studio, and it's 8:00 and you're in Newport in Wales. What's going on? Oh, and I thought, I don't. So what am I going to say to these people? Rang them up, and they were quite rightly pissed. Too late to even find anybody to try and wreck their show. Another time was, Joe, I've got a bit of advertising for you. So it's not a lot of money. It's Marks and Spencer's. They want you to do their underwear, like the pants and all that. So he said, oh, I'm not doing that. I said, why are you not doing it? Well, I'm not walking around my underwear. I said, you're fighting a ring with a pair of shorts on. What's the bloody difference? So he said, I'm not doing that. Anyway, so cut a long story short, wasn't a lot of money. It was 10 grand, but it wasn't bad money back in those. But more importantly for him, it was going on in every billboard, every Marks and Spencer store when they had stores in Europe and all over the place. You remember when before they pulled? Yeah. So he was the poster boy. He didn't do it, and they did it, and then from there, what's his name was at Arsenal, Freddie Lindbergh. Yeah. He wound up getting a short. He would have got that, and so what am I supposed? I stopped doing anything like that because all he was doing was creating promises.
Not reliable, yeah.
And but a great fighter,
but that was my point. Not so much the endorsements, but the fact that he travels in a way that I think someone with that record, in terms of people's mindsets, he doesn't get the recognition that possibly he should have gotten.
Well,
but that might also be because he doesn't sell himself the way he should.
He doesn't sell himself.
Yeah.
He can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Everything was a bit of a chore. Listen, the one thing about him as a fighter, he was a lion.
Yeah.
Once he was in that ring, that was it. I mean, he had some great fights.
Yeah,
he showed some unbelievable, going. And you're saying what promote him? I've made Showtime take him. All our fights here, all of these fights were shown back in America.
How'd you fall out of him then? How'd you end up in court with him?
It's very last fight.
All right.
We had the contract was over. And I just said we met in a lawyer's, and I had one fight left for him. And I said to him, and he wanted to go to the States to fight Roy Jones. Mm-hmm. And cut a long story short, I said to him, I wanted him to fight Pavlik. Remember Pavlik? Who was undefeated, and Pavlik was made for him. It'd have been another Jeff Lacy fight, but he wouldn't have it, and he wanted to go and do this fight. And I said to him, Roy Jones, make it your last fight, and you do that back in Wales. I said, everybody would turn out, you beat Roy Jones all day long. Anyway, we had this meeting and we shook hands, like I said, and that was the court case, was whether there was a handshake or not. And as you know, a handshake's not worth the paper it's written on.
Absolutely not.
And that
so he took you to court on the back of the fact that you had a handshake.
And what we did.
Did you have a handshake?
Yeah. On my children's lives, my grandchildren's lives, I shook his hand. And he's a liar to this day. If he wants to take me to court, I'm telling you now, I'll meet him there. I did that, and he knows it. I don't care what he says. I shook hands with him. And unfortunately, the judge said, he not even chose to believe Joe, he chose to believe a solicitor who didn't see it happen. He said, I never see that happen. So he chose to believe him. And that was the end. That was the case. Joe Calzaghe, a couple of years later, comes to my office, bringing up two fighters with me, one being Joe Cordina, and asked me to sign them and work with him. I'm the guy that legged him over. I got texts from his father saying, Frank, I'm sorry for what happened. I said, and I phoned him. I said, let me just tell you something. It's my son. I said, let me tell you something, Enzo. If my son, I'd do anything for my kids, but I'd tell him what the difference is between right and wrong. And you know that we shook hands.
So the bottom line is, despite the line of questioning, it's a complete and utter unfairness. Anyone suggesting that you don't operate in a way that's fair and equitable.
80% of this crap is over about 3 fighters who went to Hearn. And I had a contract and I sued them. And the one that went first was Bellew. We had one fight left with Bellend, one fight left with him. And then what happened was it was a fight for the British title. And I would have won that case. And cut long story short, my son, George, said, why are we doing this? What do we want to be bothered with it? So we were due to go and cut, and I pulled it. And we went before the Board of Control still and asked him who got paid money from that case at the Boxing Board of Control.
No, I put these questions to you, and we'll move on from it because we don't need to dwell on it any more than we want to, because it's really easy for people to say things about people. When if I say it to you, you're going to answer the question.
Do you know how many fighters I've promoted?
Hundreds, Frank.
How many?
I don't know. Hundreds.
Many hundreds.
Right.
So how many people you've fallen out with in your life?
Out of all
the people you know?
I don't fall out of anyone.
Of course not. Be careful what you wish for.
Who's the most? I mean, we know who's the most whinging fighter.
No, I don't mean a whinge. Listen,
you call him a whinger.
He won all that with me. He had a great career. I got a letter off of Vic Wakeling from Sky saying they didn't want to deal with him. I got a letter from what was his name? The guy who was at ITV saying he didn't want to work with him. I made him take his fights as part of a package. I knew he was a good fighter. I knew he could do this, and he did do it.
Yeah, he did.
He wouldn't travel. He wouldn't go to the States. It's well documented. He wouldn't get on a plane. Showtime saying to me, we need him over here. And he wouldn't get on he would not go there. Things we had to do to get him to go there. He wouldn't travel.
Who's the nicest person that you got to deal with in boxing?
What, a boxer? I've got lots of friends from boxing, lots of nice fighters I do. I mean, Naz is a friend. Very good. I speak to him a lot. I mean, as I say, he's asked me to look after his boys. I like him. I love Tyson. Brendan was a big friend.
Brendan Ingle.
Big friend of mine. We used to speak most days.
What about any good friends amongst the other promoters?
Big friend. I'll get on all right with Bob Arum. I've known Bob since I've done my first show with Bob in 1985. King I worked with. We were partners for about 4 years. Because
there does seem to be a lot of rancor between you guys. I mean, you got lots to say about Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn's got lots to say about you. And Ben Shalom's new kid on the block.
I've never met him. I've only met Ben Shalom twice, very briefly. Eddie Hearn.
But you're always digging at one another.
Well, all I do is respond to it. I don't. You go and look at any. Mine's all response. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely all response. But they make up their history, don't they? All this, like they're all tough
seems to
guys.
Be a lot.
I come from a tough background.
Bullshit, Frank. It seems
of course
to be a lot of bullshit.
I come from a tough background.
Yeah,
and I don't want to be in a tough background. I don't want my kids being. My kids are all been well educated, all gone to uni. That's what I want. You move on. They talk like they're gangsters. I mean, Barry Hearn was an accountant, but you talk to him, you think he was one of the mafia. I mean, all the fights he's had. I mean, he couldn't. Well, he just couldn't go 2 rounds in a revolving door, could he? I mean, and you talk to this nonsense. They talk such garbage sometimes, and make up stories about themselves, about these. I mean, was it his story, Barry? I wanted to see if he was a tough guy, so I put him in the ring and I threw him my best right hand. Who would do that to your son?
With his son, yeah, Eddie. Yeah.
And it's a story.
Yeah. No, because I mean, that I've had a few run-ins with Eddie Hearn, and I'm always conscious of every time, because you and I get on quite well, and every time I talk to you, I have a different conversation with you than I have with Eddie, because I can't stand bullshit. I can't stand people. I can't stand people that's like nailing a jelly to the wall. And you have a conversation with somebody and you know that they're not saying something that's true, and you're trying to make them accountable for it. And what they do is they redirect. And that's why I focused on some of the things that you say, because people will always say to me every time I have a conversation with you, "Oh, you like Frank?" So you let him get off easy. "Oh, you like Frank because you give him a pass."
A bloody argument.
Absolutely. Talking about the personalities of promoters, have you guys got to be bigger and bolder than the people that you represent?
I'm just myself.
But is it a stock in trade? I mean, Don King was always running around going, God bless America.
No, it's the thing. Right. Don King is a promoter of Don King. Very astute guy in his at the top. Street guy, very street guy. Didn't get into boxing until he was in his 40s when he came out of prison, but a street guy, very fearless in business from a business point of view. He got to come out of prison and changed his life. Now, some of the street he couldn't get out of him, maybe in some of his behaviour. Bob Arum, you could say it was a backward step for him getting into boxing. Harvard lawyer, worked for the Kennedy administration, and then become a boxing promoter by accident. So
but it's a tough business, isn't it?
It's a tough business.
But you've got your boys going into it as well. I mean,
I didn't want them in it. What I didn't realise, because boxing's it's a time-consuming business. You're doing your work in the office, you've got a lot of travelling, but your shows are invariably on a Saturday night. And if they're not in local to where you live, London or whatever,
you're travelling.
You're travelling, so in a hotel, so you get home. And what I didn't realise, my kids were watching all this. My boys were just absolutely entranced and seduced by it all. And I didn't realise how much. They all, as I said, they all had a good education. They all went to university, done well, got their degrees and so forth. Francis now has probably got the best stable of fighters. He manages a lot of fighters, and he's got a very, very good stable of fighters. Very good stable of fighters.
When you look, I mean, I think Georgia is a smart as paint. And I think that there's a lot of things that you guys do well. I think there's a lot of things that the other guys do well as well. And I wanted to ask you, I mean, despite the observation I've just made about the rancor between you and the other promoters, do you admire in any way what these guys are doing? You've got Eddie Hearn, that is, a self-promotionalist, but he's got traction and he's got energy and currency and he's making big fights. Yep. You've got Ben Shalom, who's young and brave and going to learn a lot. And I know you probably think he's got a lot to learn in the same way that you probably had a lot to learn when you were younger.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. And you've got Callie and his mob who are over with Wasserman's, who are one of the biggest agencies in the world.
Yeah.
When you look at these guys, is there things about them that you admire and things about them that you respect, or is it just all conflict?
Barry Hearn, he got into boxing. Him and I were partners for a very brief time in a snooker business, which I walked away with. IMG, our company, and him, and IMG and myself walked away from it. And obviously, his boy, like my boys are quite privileged in there. They didn't have to go like the tough background that I came from, and they've done well for themselves. And certainly, as you say, Eddie Hearn's done extremely well for himself. You can also be in the right place at the right time. Yeah. You sign up. AJ was in the Olympics. We were very close to doing that. He'd been coming to my show for quite a few years. And the fact we left Sky and went off and started doing our own thing. His agent at the time, I don't know, or between they decided they would go with Sky, which obviously then became Eddie Hearn, and he did extremely well with him. And what we've done it the hard way. We've absolutely done it the hard way, bringing fighters through, and fighters sometimes that were unfashionable fighters. Calzaghe, Naz, Ricky Hatton, many others. None of them went to the Olympics. None of them went to the Olympics. Didn't win any medals or anything.
Different way of doing it, isn't it? I mean, yours was
as is knowledge.
Yeah,
is the knowledge of bringing the guys through correctly, making the right matches at the right time, and we've done that. Well, I've done it constantly for the last 40 odd years.
I want to move you on to a subject that I know is relevant and specific to the circumstances that we find ourselves in with boxing, which is Saudi. And it isn't just boxing. It's obviously sport, full stop. And I have my view on whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think every country should be able to evolve, but it shouldn't balls up everything else for everyone else by the very nature of the fact that it's got more money than it knows what to do with, and it wants to create a position in sport for whatever reason it wants to do it. I know if you're doing business with Saudi, you're probably not going to want to answer this question too readily.
It's not a question about doing business.
It's not a good thing though, is it?
I don't agree. We are doing business with,
but they're polluting the landscape because when they don't choose to do something.
Well, people want it. You want it, but you're saying Saudi Arabia. There's all this criticism about them. So they're coming into the 21st century, and they're out there. They're trying to say, right, this is our country. What have we got? We've got wealth.
No problem with that.
We can do.
I've got no problem with that.
Okay. Is it any different than when Abramovich came here?
No, it's just as bad.
Or the same thing up in Man City, where it changed the whole landscape of football.
You're missing the point. That changed the landscape of football, but football got played, right? And what we're saying now is that the fighters have got their eyes over here, which is that Saudi money comes to town, and Saudi money pays more because it pays ridiculous money. It pays facility fees that you can't get anywhere else in the world. That's why these fights are going to happen in Saudi. And if Saudi decides, oh no, I don't fancy this, or we'll piss ball around for a year, or we won't make offers, or we'll get everybody at it, we'll get you involved in a conversation about moving the Chisora fight and maybe having the Usyk fight in Saudi, and the contract doesn't come through, and everyone gets their knickers in a twist. And then we get the situation happening in December where they talk about making a fight and everybody gets involved and Skills Challenge become involved, and Usyk signs with Skills Challenge and everybody thinks there's going to be a fight, and then for some reason it doesn't happen, and then another 3 months goes past and all of a sudden that's a year. So that, to my mind, makes it not a good thing. It don't make it a good thing, Frank.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and the fact that the fights, what were supposed to be happening, didn't happen. You can't, it isn't a good thing that they didn't happen. But that's not. And the expectation level and what Percy's fighters get paid, I'll get that and understand it. But one of the guys that you have criticism of him with Tyson. He's the only one out of all of them who said, you know what, I'll do these fights in the UK, and whatever they generate. It's the opposition that wouldn't do the fights. And that's a fact. They wouldn't do it. We made offers. No one's made one offer. There's not one offer to Tyson Fury this year. Not one single offer. Nothing. So,
but he's the heavyweight champion in the world. He's going to be making the offers, isn't he? Who's going to be making offers to him? He's the champ. You'll be controlling that flow.
I'm saying he's not saying, let's wait for Saudi. He's saying, I want to fight. Go and make the offer. He goes on thing. I'll give you your 60-40. He says to the other fella, I'll give you 70-30.
You mean, you're talking about Joshua though, aren't you?
And I'm talking about Usyk. And you can have 70-30.
But going back to the Saudi thing, and because for me, I don't have any issues. I do have issues with some of the challenges in those countries, but I'm also of the mindset that each country evolves at its own pace, and we in the West don't have the right to sit here telling people how their society should evolve. If people want to do that, Amnesty International can do that, and they can leverage whatever they want, and I get all that. But where I worry for the sport is that if the Saudis don't want to play, they've created a situation now where they've raised the bar on the finances, and every other fight from there on in is poorly paid by comparison. You're saying, well, that's great, but that's other fighters. But in what my boy does, Tyson Fury, he'll fight wherever there's an opportunity to fight for decent money, irrespective of the fact that he hasn't fought for the best part of a year.
Well, he's not been able to fight because we've not had an opponent to fight.
Yeah, I know, Frank, but
because look, you can't have both. You're saying he said to both of those guys, Wembley. We booked we penciled it, had the first hold on the dates at Wembley, not once, 3 times. We booked West Ham to do the fight. Asked them, but the reality is now, is through His Excellency and through Dr. Rakan, we've made a fight because they're all saying they can't do a fight this year. We're doing a show with them in Saudi on the 28th. Now, I know you don't like the fight, but we're doing the show on that date in Saudi. So there is a date to be done, and we've done it. And so it's opened yet another avenue open for fighters to, Tyson comes through. I don't think Usyk will come through, but if he does by some miracle, then he can fight. Then he can fight Tyson on the show that we put together over there.
Given that we're now talking specifically about the heavyweight division and moved on from the fact that Saudi, I maintain the view that I think Saudi creates as many problems as it provides solutions to.
But it will, let me tell you something.
It will level out.
It will level out. It's like everything happens. It's one of the problems we had with fighters before pay-per-view. You've got a fighter, he's going to have to go to Vegas. You know why is it on in Vegas?
Because
they get a site fee from the casino before you start. So we were up against that pay-per-view level. When I launched a pay-per-view with Tyson, Mike Tyson and Frank Bruno, we done the first show on Sky. That was a game changer because then we could start doing, and we started doing lots of shows over here with Showtime. I had a contract with Showtime. We launched a lot of fighters' careers on there. Naz fought regularly before we took him out there. And this is a slightly similar situation. But where we are now, we're doing an event out there. We're opening up the Riyadh Festival, which is huge. I mean, all the stuff they got in it comes to multi-million pounds, all the different events, entertainment and so forth.
Talking about game changers, you can't possibly be telling me that Tyson Fury fighting Francis Ngannou is a game changer. You referred to game changers the other day. This can't be what you were
just explain why it's a game changer. We just now work. We now are promoting in Saudi Arabia. How's it not a game changer? We're not reliant on anybody else. We actually are having events on. We're putting the events on. We're not sitting around waiting for, let's wait now and let everybody be held up to next year. We're putting an event on. The reality is we're doing a show in October in Saudi.
So your game
the biggest show. And it's a game changer as far as they come. And as regarding what you're saying about is it a game changer, yesterday on Twitter.
Yeah, come on. Are you going to use social media as a blueprint for making
you're using it.
No, I'm not.
You say to me, have you seen what they're saying on social media about this fight? Can't have it both ways.
No, I haven't said that.
Be careful what you wish for.
No, be careful what you wish for. I don't give a monkey's what they say on social media about this fight. I think it's a dog with fleas. Okay. I don't think the WBC champion of the world should be in a position where the WBC give all this old fanny about he's a special kind of champion. So we give him special.
Nothing to do with him.
Yes, they did. They said that. Well, then why isn't he being made to have a mandatory?
Sorry?
Why hasn't there been a mandatory lined up for him?
Because the two guys who were ordered to fight for the mandatory not fought. Because
they're waiting. Move them out of the way. Make another mandatory then.
Because they're waiting to see what happened in December in Saudi. Deontay Wilder weren't fighting until then. That's why.
But it's poor.
Now they're negotiating.
It is poor,
It ain't my fault.
It's poor,
It's
though,
not my
isn't it?
fault, is it?
I mean, we're looking at the fights that are being made out there. We listen to Tyson. And I know that you and I discussed Tyson on a number of occasions. And you know that I come from a position of admiration for Tyson Fury. I don't agree with a lot of things that come out of his mouth, but I do regularly campaign for the fact that generationally, I think he's the best fighter around. But going back to the point around this fight with Francis Ngannou, what I want you guys to do is I want you to be honest.
Right, let me be honest.
Because a lot of you are not honest, right? You say one thing is this and it's not. This is not about Tyson Fury, the WBC heavyweight champion of the world. This is one thing and one thing only. This is a money fight.
This is the biggest event I've ever been involved with. That's how big it's going to be.
Right.
It's huge. And it'll make a lot of money.
Yeah. It's just a money fight, though, isn't it?
Okay.
There's no credibility in it. It's just a money fight.
Well, let me finish. It's going to have a lot of eyeballs on it. And you've got the best, the lineal champion, and you've got the number one heavyweight in UFC.
Yeah.
Right? The guy in UFC's decides he wants to fight. So fine, I haven't got a problem with that. The fight's made. Sam Jones, who looked after, at the time, Joe Joyce, made a statement yesterday saying that Joe Joyce actually sparred with him and he had 8 rounds real tough sparring with him. Now, I don't know where I'm not a UFC fan. I don't watch it. But I've watched it over the last couple of weeks and this fella whacks.
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
What's he going to do? He's going to come in the ring.
I think he's going to get his ears boxed off by Tyson Fury.
If he does, he does. That's his choice. He's getting paid a heck of a load of money. But let me tell you something. It's a massive, massive, massive event. The biggest event out there. Yeah. It'll break box office records.
Fantastic. But it's just a money fight. It's just a money situation. Because it's called
professional boxing. It's called professional
boxing. A mixed martial artist, right? Even Khabib is coming out and saying there is no chance that this MMA fighter does anything that to Tyson Fury in this fight. In the same way, if you put Tyson Fury into the octagon with him, Tyson Fury would lose in that discipline. So I don't mind, but all I want to have is an acceptance from you, because there's this constant debate. My motivations are: I love boxing, I love the sport of boxing, I love the integrity of it, or my perceived version of integrity of it. Given the fact that I've come from football, I think there's very little integrity. So when I see this kind of what I think is bullshit, I don't mind. But I want you to call it for what it is. It's just money. It's got nothing else to it attached to it. There's nothing about anything else other than, because you don't like the YouTube world. You don't like all that stuff. You think the Jake Pauls of the world are a bunch of nitwits.
I don't think I think Jake Paul's a genius.
You think he's a marketing genius, but in the great terms of being compared as a boxer.
But I've told you, we talked about that on many times on your show, and I said that him and Tommy Fury are novices, which they were.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not changing what I said there, but they made a truckload of money, and good luck to them. God bless them. Regarding this event, it is massive. You've got let me.
I'm going to let you go. Go on.
It's a massive, massive event. It's as I say, eyeballs everything. Do I think Tyson will win? Of course I do. But then I think Tyson beats everybody.
But this is my disappointment with it all, because I just don't think it's becoming. I mean,
Will you watch it?
No, I won't actually. I won't. No, I won't, mate. If I was going to watch it, I'd say I was going to watch it. And what I want to see, and what I would love to see, and I, like you, have been around a lot of significant people in our lives, people of caliber and people of influence. And when I met Tyson Fury a while ago, I thought this is a superstar.
He is.
He came in the dressing room, and this is a superstar. And everything about him, from the manner he was on message to the manner in which he spoke, I said, now that's charisma.
Yeah.
That's a superstar.
Has he lost it?
This time last year, a little bit earlier, he beats Dillian White in a 4-round outclass, wiped the floor with him, right? Then he goes on telling people he's not going to fight again. Then he goes on television and tells Piers Morgan he's never going to fight again and bets him £1 million that he doesn't pay up on, right? Then he tells everyone he's going to fight 10 fights this year, or in the next 2 years, he's going to give everybody a fight. And now we've got the WBC heavyweight champion in the world in with thunderlips.
Well, he did retire. And he had enough of it.
For 5 minutes, everyone knew he was coming back. Even his own dad knew he was coming back.
I said once he gets fed up with it, he'll come back. But that's how his mind was. That's it. But regarding what you're saying about charisma, why do you think he's getting paid the money he's getting paid for? Because he's got charisma. He's massive. This is Tyson Fury. Broke all box office records in Vegas for heavyweight title fight against Wilder. Broke box office records.
Mm-hmm.
Purse bid against White. Broke the record for a purse bid ever.
You did?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
No, he did because it was his fight. I paid for it, but it was his fight. The Wembley broke records for any event to ever take place at Wembley. Any event on a one-day event broke all records. Netflix has got a series coming out, reality series next week. Next month. That's charisma. All those things are charisma. 3 books he's had out. All went to number 1. All of them. That's charisma. Not only has he got charisma, he can fight.
Oh, I know he can fight. And that's why I'm disappointed that we're not seeing. You're saying, well, it's because we're offering these fighters and Ruiz wouldn't come over or couldn't come over and he wanted to get paid.
20 million.
He wanted 20 million and that's unrealistic for it to be achieved and so on and so forth. But do you worry? Because I've gone from being an absolute dyed-in-the-wool, probably slightly biased Tyson Fury fan to going, you're getting on my nerves a bit now.
Why? It's not his fault.
Well, it is in part because I think he's difficult to deal with. I think it makes your life difficult for him to deal with because I think he's gone over. I listened to Carl Froch, your mate, saying when I fight Kessler, in order to make this fight happen, I'll do 50-50 because it makes the fight happen. I've got respect for the other guy, yet.
Well, Kessler come over and had a great fight with Joe Calzaghe.
And I understand that, but it made the fight happen. Yet we get into a situation constantly and persistently where Tyson is always on the other side of the argument where, and you're going to say, is this commercial man? Well, that's the value in the conversation. But if there's no fight at the end of it, it doesn't matter if Tyson's got 80% of bugger all. He's got bugger all out of a fight.
Correct.
Right, so he's now going to fight an MMA guy to get paid, rather than have made fights against Usyk on a 50-50 basis and everyone gets paid.
Sorry, just stop. How can you make a fight with a guy who won't fight you? We made him offers. He's never made us an offer. So how can you make the fight?
Yeah, but you did piss ball around on that as well. You did piss ball around. You did put rematch clauses in there and then took rematch clauses out and then you put them on, then you took them off and then you didn't want them and he didn't want them and it got yourself into a bun fight.
No. It didn't get, what? That don't become an issue. There's no big rows about it. That's like, do you want to do this in the end? I said to Tyson, kill it then. We don't do it. And that was the end of it. And you've heard Tyson going there, sick of waiting for it. He's one of those guys. He'll say he'll wake up that morning and say, I've had enough of this. I want to fight.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And so you can't, he's not ducking him. It's the most ridiculous statement.
I maintain the view in the face of a background noise that he is, that I don't think he is. I don't think he's the easiest to deal with. But I guess it comes with.
But they don't deal with him. I deal with him.
You deal with him.
They deal with us.
Yeah, I understand that.
And Krasek himself, it's not hard dealing with Frank and George. It's not hard. These are his words, not mine. You go and check them out. I like them. It's not good. It's not hard dealing with them. What the problem was, as we've discussed in great length, is what was going on and the expectation level of a big show in Saudi in December, which I never thought was going to happen. And, unfortunately, I was proved right. I just want Tyson to move on from silly social media outbursts, silly observations all the time that go from one extreme to the other. If we've got to have, and I want you to, I want you to say it, this fight that he's having in Saudi is purely and simply just a money deal. That's it. There's nothing else behind it. He's just getting paid. That's it. It's a huge part of what it's about.
It's the only part, Frank.
No, it's not the only part.
Come on, it's the only part.
No, it's not. We are working in a new market in Saudi that's being delivered. It's huge.
Right,
they've delivered. How can you just disregard that?
I'm not disregarding.
We're working with people who are stepped up to the plate and said, this is what we'll do to make it work to start with. And that's what we've done.
So this is the gateway then. So fantastic. This is the gateway then that opens the door to proper fights then, is it?
I hope so.
We all let Tyson Fury get paid a big bag of money, knowing what it is, which is a money fight, but it's a gateway. And we've got relationships now where the proper fights that everybody wants to see Tyson Fury be in are more likely to happen as a result of these sort of things happening first off.
If Tyson comes through,
which he will,
and if Usyk comes through, which I don't think he will, then there's a great opportunity to make that fight then.
Your man's in a great vein of form. He's been unbeaten. And I'm the last person to defend Anthony Joshua. I get vilified by his camp for constantly calling him a flat track bully. But I can understand his strategy. I can understand the fact that he's gone in against Usyk where your man hasn't done that yet. But in recent times, your guy's in such a vein of form. If I'm Joshua and I've had the challenges that I've had, and all of a sudden the gloss has come off me a little bit, and the people are starting to point their finger at me, and all the high tide that I've created economically in the division is now having a backlash on me. I'm not going to fight Tyson Fury until I'm good and ready. I'm going to be the best version of myself. That would mean I go in with a new trainer, and do a job on Jermaine Franklin, which he didn't do, which tells me that he's not going to do much of a job when he gets against Tyson Fury, if he ever does. But I would be taking another fight in the middle of it before I got anywhere near one of the big guys, whether it be the guy that your guy dealt with on 3 occasions, Deontay Wilder, or whether it be Tyson himself. And if you were his promoter, you'd be saying the same thing.
No, I wouldn't. No, I would not. I'd make him fight him. Because I've got to tell you something, he's liable to get beaten by anybody.
I know you think that.
I'm right.
Yeah.
He's liable to get beaten by anybody. He hits him on that chin, he's going to go. As he's throwing a shot now, you watch him. As he's throwing a punch, he's a big puncher. As he throws it,
he wants to get out of range, yeah.
Because he's terrified of the counter.
Yeah, I mean, Barry McGuigan said the same thing. Last year, I think Joshua was right not to take that fight. And if you were managing Joshua, you'd never stuck him in that fight.
I would have.
You would never, Frank. 2 months after being beaten by Usyk, with Tyson Fury,
he didn't take a belting in that fight. Did he take a good hiding?
No, but he took a psychologically damaging outcome.
He's psychologically gone for a couple of years now. Don't you worry about
that. I don't disagree with you on that.
But the point I'm making is Joshua gets a shot. Well, let's take that to another level. So Joshua, would you want to see Joshua in with Usyk again? Not particularly.
Not particularly. I wouldn't want to see Tyson Fury with Deontay Wilder either.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. Although it'd be a better fight. But the other side of it, and so if he's not going to fight the guy who's got 3 of the belts, and the only other belt's WBC, and you don't want to fight him, so what do you want to do? Well, do you think he's going to get any better to take these guys on?
Well, that's what they're selling, aren't they? That's what they're selling.
That's the bullshit they're selling.
Then we'll see, won't we?
Yeah.
Do you think that we will get Tyson fighting everyone that he should fight in order for the claim that people make, and I'm in that camp, that generationally he's the best heavyweight around?
Well,
do you think we're going to see all these fights?
I think you'll see some more, but you've got to look at his legacy up to us yet, and his legacy up to us yet that he went to Germany
and beat Klitschko. And opened the division up for everybody.
18 months before.
Yep, Anthony Joshua did it. He opened it up. Everyone benefited from it.
Remember, he had Joshua. Yeah. He had Joshua on the floor in that when he's fighting. He was, but more importantly, he went there and done him at his own game, boxed his head off.
Granted.
I mean, absolutely.
Granted.
He went to America, another travelling abroad, and fought the hardest. Statistically, hardest punching heavyweight.
Probably most technically inept as well.
No, I don't know. Not most technically. I don't agree with that. And absolutely done a.
In all 3 fights,
all good fights.
But in all 3 fights, he won all 3 fights.
Yeah, the second one he absolutely destroyed him.
He did.
The first one he won it and he got a draw, and the third one was a bloody good war. And whatever the technique was lacking, the heart and desire was there, and he had Tyson on the floor a couple of times in that fight.
But in order...
And Tyson got up.
Yes, I know he did.
Didn't get like
Lazarus here.
And leg it.
Right.
No. Got up and done what he had to do.
But the point is in order for him, the argument will be based upon the fact that in order for Tyson and for you as his promoter to give him the outcomes that everyone thinks that his talent should determine, he's got to move on from just fighting one of the top fighters.
Well, there's only 2 left.
He's only fought one of the top fighters.
He's not fought one of the top fighters. He's fought...
Klitschko was the best of his generation. Fine, okay, all right, 2 then. He's fought two of the top fighters around in the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
Klitschko, that was coming to the end, Deontay Wilder, but in order for Tyson to achieve the outcomes and you as a promoter to deliver that, he's also got to fight Usyk, or if it might be Daniel, if Daniel beats Usyk. But as a Brit, I want Daniel to win.
Yeah.
As a fight fan, I think it's going to be very difficult for him. He's got to fight Joshua. If Joshua's still on the scene, if Joshua does a number.
Why beating Joshua is that a defining
because
fight?
I think Joshua's been a 2-time heavyweight champion of the world. I think it's a fight that it builds legacies, doesn't it?
But I don't agree with that. It's like saying, when Larry Holmes fought Mike Tyson, Larry Holmes was a great fighter in his time, but when he
was 40 odd years of age.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Against 21-year-olds.
And Joshua's had the crap kicked out of him in the last few. What's he had in his last few fights? He's lost 3 of them.
No, I agree with you.
So
but
I wouldn't call it. I'm just trying to. He's not a legacy
finish off the legacy thing with Tyson Fury by saying
Usyk, if he's still around,
Usyk and Joshua at this moment in time are the 2 names that we're talking about that have resonance attached to it. Because he's already fought
Zhang and Joyce,
right? And do you believe in your mind's eye that that all of those fights are going to be made?
I believe they will be made. If he wants to carry on fighting, they'll be made. Absolutely. In the meantime, he's got to keep. I don't want him being out the ring until if this thing wasn't happening in Saudi, this great event in Saudi, which is going to be the biggest event I've ever been involved in. If this wasn't happening, he won't be fighting until next.
Wheelbarrows of money coming in.
He won't be fighting until next March.
There's a lot to talk about legacies. And your mate Carl was throwing them around about legacies the other day. And you'll probably agree with this one because he was criticising Anthony Joshua's legacy. But for you, what defines a legacy?
What, as a fighter?
Yeah, as a fighter.
I think willing to fight who's ever around, the best that are around, and willing to step up and do it. And I think Ricky Hatton has a legacy because he stepped up and fought everybody. He's actually in an era where there was 2 really good fighters at their best in Pacquiao
and Mayweather.
Yeah. I think in another era.
And he fought them all.
Yeah, and he fought them.
So then the question is, if Tyson retired tomorrow, how would you define his legacy?
I'd define his legacy as this is the guy who wanted to fight everybody. They wouldn't want to fight him for the reasons we've explained. And if you look at the others, Naz wanted, there was no problem with Naz. We made Naz with everybody who was around. The same with Calzaghe. He fought everybody.
When you look at your time in this sport, what are the things that you've done that made you most proud?
Funding all the MRI scans for boxers.
Right.
Because the board at the time couldn't afford it. Being involved with lots of fighters, giving them a legacy where they'd done well. Like Nigel Benn in his book said, he should never have left me. He come back, by the way. He went and then came back. So I've had some fabulous nights in boxing, some great times. I've met some interesting people. I mean, I got invited the day after Sugar Boy Malinga beat
Nigel Benn.
I got an invite next day to go to meet Nelson Mandela. And then I'm sitting in his house with this boxing lunatic, complete boxing nut in his house in Joburg. Where's this come? I thought it was a joke when I got the call. When I get there and sit down with him, and he's probably one of the most impressive people I've ever met in my whole life.
Last question for you, Frank. When you look at your life and you look at the career that you've been on, what do you think your legacy is? And how would you like to be remembered when you eventually stop doing what you're doing? You'll go on forever. You'll outlive all of us probably, but the question still abounds. What do you think your legacy is and how would you like to be remembered?
I like to think that I made the sport, I opened it up for other promoters, which also opened it up for boxers to get bigger purses, made it more competitive. I like to think that I've helped to help fighters on their journey to secure themselves financially and fame and fortune. I like people to hopefully think that I do care about the sport. I do care about the sport. And personally, I want to be, I've always, to friends, been a good friend and being a good dad. That's all I care about. I mean, and that's
as good as it gets, isn't it?
That's all. As long as everybody around who I care about are happy, the ones who don't care about me, I can get on with it. I don't care.
Frank Warren, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being so upfront with me.
It has, thank you.
Upfront with me, Simon Jordan, is brought to you by William Hill. Future episodes can be found on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. 18 plus, please gamble responsibly.